This week I tackle a Bob Ross classic, Twilight Beauty. A wonderful sky, some lovely background trees and some soft snow, some tricky trees on the left hand side and some lovely bushes. It's a Bob Ross classic which you should paint next. Get those brushes out. Oh, and don't forget, watch right to the very end because I do a bravery test. Well, I think I do. So the inspiration for this week's video is this beautiful painting, Twilight Beauty, a Bob Ross classic, series 27. It's one of my all-time favourite paintings to do. I painted it quite a few times, but I think I need to do this on a canvas for you today and try and add some extra little details, of course. So I've prepared my canvas, and this is a 16 by 20, and you can just about see where I've stuck an oval onto it. I've reinforced that edge with a little bit of masking tape because, well, from previous experiences, these ovals can lift off. A little tiny strip of masking tape can save the day. I've given the whole canvas a coat of black gesso which has dried completely before I put that little oval onto here. Right, let's get started with some paint. And the first thing I need is some of this. And this is Bob Ross Liquid Clear Oil Paint. This is a thin even coat applied to the canvas, which means I can actually blend my colours up here on the painting rather than trying to do it all on my palette. This needs to be applied extremely sparingly. You definitely don't want your canvas too wet, because everything will run. If you don't have something like this, you can use something like refined linseed oil. Something like this is perfect. It's a little more runny, whereas the liquid clear is a little bit gloopy. So this needs to be applied very sparingly as well, and any excess taken off with a paper towel, as long as your canvas is just shiny. That's what we're looking for. Right, let's get started. For ease of application, I keep a small amount of liquid clear in an airtight pot. I keep that in the freezer. It doesn't actually freeze it, but what it does is it actually sort of makes it go stiff and sort of stops it drying out. I'm going to be using an old Bob Ross landscape brush to apply it because I need to scrub this on really thinly. And take a very small amount and just dab it round in the centre of the picture. Now, top tip, when you're painting this on, don't be tempted to brush out to the edges because you'll end up lifting that tape. Paint around the edges like that, or better still, brush in. The idea is to apply a very small amount to the entire surface of the canvas. It needs to be well scrubbed in. Right, let's carry on adding it to the whole canvas. I've dimmed the lights in the studio and turned on the torch on my mobile phone. Can you just see the reflection there? Well, the idea is you want to be able to slide your finger around and actually not leave any kind of a trail. As you can see, my canvas has got a nice thin even coat and I don't leave any marks. But check your whole canvas because you might have a wet patch somewhere and you need to be able to find it because you don't want just one part of your painting becoming extra runny. It takes just a couple of minutes, but it will save you a lot of trouble if you get it right. I want to carry on using that brush, but I want to make sure that I don't have any liquid clear left on it. So I give it a good dry clean on a piece of paper towel. Don't wash it in thinners though, because if you put thinners on this, well, liquid clear and thinners, they don't really like each other and they tend to get really into a big argument. Your painting will disintegrate as fast as you can paint it. I've put out some colours on my palette. These are all from the Bob Ross range of paints, but you use whatever brand of oil paints you have. Titanium white, phthalo blue, black, some very dark brown, some dark sienna, alizarin crimson, cad yellow, Indian yellow and red. The first one I'm going to start with though is alizarin crimson on this dry clean brush. I want to cover the entire part of my canvas where the oval sits with alizarin crimson. Now you can just about see that colour, and if I leave it on there quite thickly you can see that lovely crimson tone, and the idea is we want to cover the entire canvas with a thin coating of this. Whereas it's a little bit boring to watch because, well, you can't really see it. And that's also a problem when we want to know how much we've actually applied. You see, if I look at this, you can't see it. But if I take my fingers and touch the canvas, voila, I see that lovely crimson colour. And that's what we want, a strong crimson colour. If I touch my canvas, well, all I see, well, is that sort of faint sort of pinkish colour. That isn't going to be good enough. We need to see this all over the canvas. And as you can't see it, I'm going to do this whilst you have a little break. Okay, nap time over. I've done the entire canvas. I'm going to use my fingers to check it. Make sure you do check every part of your canvas so I've got a really good strong colour on all of it. Now, wipe off those little fingers and apply another colour. I'm going to carry on using this alizarin crimson brush. This time I'm going to add some phthalo blue. Now, if you've used phthalo blue and crimson together before, you know that they make the most amazing lavender colour. Well, I don't need to mix it up here. I'm going to mix it on my painting. And I'm going to be using it on this area, so to the left side and to the bottom edge of my oval. Now then again, this is another transparent colour, so you can't see it. But if I put a little bit on there and then touch with my finger, there, you see a strong purple colour. And that's what we want. But just around this part of my painting, on the left side and through the bottom. There's going to be trees through here and bushes through the bottom. I'll carry on adding this. I'll come back in a second. So, nap again. I turned up the exposure on my camera to the maximum, and you can just about see the colour difference. You can see the phthalo blue, and you can see where it slowly changes into this crimson colour. This looks a little bit darker on the edge here. And as you can see, I'm actually letting these colours blend. So it's quite a bluish purple colour on the outer edge. And as I go into the centre of my painting a little bit more, well, it'll slowly change from blue to lavender. I just want to do a little bit of a soft blend here, but don't let this blue colour go right the way across. As a top tip for you, because we want a nice sort of yellowy golden egg yolk colour here. And if this blue colour gets over there, well, it'll be tears before bedtime. Back to napping, folks. I'll carry on blending. I picked up a fresh brush. I want to start working on that bright glow in my sky. Remember, this is the furthest thing back in my painting. So a clean dry brush is what I'm looking for. And I'm going to go into some titanium white, a little touch of Indian yellow. I want to have a nice sort of egg yolk yellow colour for my sky. And when this colour hits that alizarin crimson, whew, it's fun. And if you notice, there's a couple of pins in my canvas. Did you notice them earlier on? I wonder if you did. Well, they tell me where the sky starts and goes up. There's going to be some little trees in there. So that's my horizon line. And I'm going to pick a point in the middle of this red, about there. Okay. And I'm going to just go into there and I'm going to just hammer on the canvas. And I'm going to keep that corner of my brush into the center. So I'm building up a nice bright glow. Look at that color. Whew. That is a winner for me. And I'm going to slowly work my way out. Now, if it's not bright enough, I can wash my brush and reload it. But I like to try and get plenty of that Indian yellow color in there right off the bat. And let it run out on my brush. Remember, here's about the place I've got to stop. So I make a little mark there. So I mustn't go further than that. Okay. Let's dry clean that brush, because I want to go back in and brighten it up a little bit more. And this often needs doing on this painting. You need to go in a couple of times and brighten things up. And again, back into that center area first. And I'm going to just work around. Now, don't forget, we got some trees coming in down here. So keep these little steps in mind as we carry on adding paint to our canvas. Okay, let's get into a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of cadmium yellow. Okay, a little bit more of that. Yeah, look at that. See, this is a little bit cooler. That's a little warm colour, that's a little cool. I'm going to go just round the outside of this a little more. Let them shake hands. And I'm going to blend my sky now. Side of the brush here, because there's a lot of paint here. Side of your brush. And the idea here is we just want to lightly sweep the paint out. We don't want to overwork this. And if I lose my rays of light, oh, that's okay. Be careful, look at that. I touched a little bit of crimson and took it right back here. Could be tough, could be trouble. But I think we're okay. Now, I'll stand back and have a look at this from the other side of the room. Make sure I'm happy with it. I've got some lovely clouds to come in next. Now, I'm going to go back into some of my white. This time, a little touch of red. I want just a pinkish kind of colour for my sky. I want to make some lovely cloud formations. I don't mind if there's a little bit of yellow in there because it actually makes a rather pretty salmon colour, which I rather like. Now I want to get some nice cloud formations coming in here, and I'm going to just use my brush. I'm just going to tap on the side in here. I just want to get these to kind of float across into my painting. And we're going to add more layers of clouds to my painting. We're going to add some slightly lavender ones as well. Sometimes when we're painting these, what I call long stringy clouds, we tend to paint them like fingers. Like 4 fingers coming this way and 4 fingers coming the other way. And it literally looks like you've got a pair of hands coming into your painting and kind of grabbing the sky. So I always make sure I do uneven lengths. I kind of put 1 long one in and 3 or 4. So it's not an even number. I make sure that I don't kind of get myself into the position of making it look like a pair of hands. I just tap that across there. A little bit of lavender coming through there, see? Means my brush, I can't really do much more with it now. But I like the effect. If I dry my brush, you see, there's the lavender. That's going to get me into trouble if I don't dry clean this brush really well. Okay, I'm going to try carry on with this brush, but I may have to switch it out. Okay, let's do some nice long flat strokes here. Again, just keep them nice and level. Lavender paint again. Sorry, lavender. That peachy pink colour. There's a little touch of blue in there, but kind of nothing too much to worry about. I'm going to start kind of well away from that lavender colour there. Maybe we'll just have 1 or 2 little touches of colour in here. And maybe just let some of that creep back in to the painting here. Isn't that cool? I know Bob would paint really quick. Really quick. I mean, he was super speedy, but what I can say is you don't need to be. I got a little more, there's a little more blue to the outside edge. So I went out here and I picked up a little bit of the phthalo blue colour. And see what it does. It drops me in a lovely deep cloud. If you pick up a strange colour, stop and dry clean your brush again. I just want to pull this along. There we go. And once again, I'll stand back and look at this from the other side of the studio. Back in a second. I've stood back and I really like this. I think it's just about bright enough. Maybe it could have been a hair brighter, but I think for the time being, I'm okay. Now, I need to mix up a nice grey colour. And Bob's recipe was a little touch of phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, a little touch of black. Okay, and of course a little touch of white. So we want sort of a blue-grey colour here. I think I've got some mucky white there I can use. Let's have a look at this. Now, it's just too dark, I think. I think it must be a little bit paler than that. I think I need a touch more white. Let me get some. Now here's a tip for you. How much white do you think I'll have to add to that to make a pale grey colour? Enough to do a little row of trees across the background. So I reckon I could use all of that and still not be able to get it right. So here's a tip. Put some down to the side, mix your colour up, and then see if you need to add any more from the original pile. You can bring some across. But rather than try and change a whole pile of colour, just for a little row of trees, do a little to the side. There we go. Now, is it the right colour? Well, by eye you just can't tell. You have to offer it up to the canvas. And that looks a little bit too bright. Let's dull this down a little more. I think that's not bad actually. Yes, just a little bit darker than the background colour. I just wanted to show up against these trees and yet light enough to show up against the darker colours. Right, okay, let's go with that. I've got a number 3 fan brush. I'm going to go into that grey colour that I just mixed up. And I can tint it or change it slightly. I think I might just want a little bit brighter or a little bit lighter in the centre. Just where it's under the brightest part of the sky. And just go through that colour and give your brush a nice little wiggle. Really groom your brush to a nice flat edge. Chiseled edge. Now, I want this to look like it's sort of going away into the distance. So I want these background trees to be really small. There we go. Now, you tell me, too pale? They're okay, but that one there, I think it's just a little bit on the pale side. So we'll tint it just a little bit more. Let's add a little bit more. Ah, see, just a shade different. Let's say, I want this to look like it's going off into the distance. So we're going to put on a few bigger ones and a couple of smaller ones. And the stroke I'm doing is I'm touching and I'm letting the brush slide down. Let me swing my camera around so you get a better view. There we are. I've moved my camera around a little bit. Now, these ones look fairly upright, but from the camera angle, they look like they're sort of laying over a little bit. So let's see if I can true these up a little bit more. Again, you see I'm just using that top edge of my fan brush and I'm just tapping and skidding. And as I do that, I'm picking up some of the background tree colours, sorry, some of the background sky colours. So this colour is changing all the time. Load your brush to a chiseled edge again, and then use your brush down at an angle. So we've got just the point of the brush going in, and just add a few little branches. There's some more trees coming in front, so some of this is going to get covered, but it's fun just to put the odd tree here and there. Now, with my nice brush from the sky, I want to diffuse the base of this a little bit, so I'm going to lay my brush inside and just tap. I want to create a nice sort of misty effect in here, but I don't want to drag the colour down too far, so just be a little bit careful here. You want to be going up and down a little bit, just grabbing a little bit, carrying a little bit of colour up into the base of these trees. You can even give them a little up flick. Any little points going up. Not that one. There we go. Right, next layer of trees. It's the same colour, but a little darker, maybe a little bit more purple. After a little bit of work, I come up with a colour I think is going to work. It's sort of a blue-purple colour, and I dry clean my fan brush, and I just want to load this really well. And again, it's one of those sort of funny colours, really, isn't it? It has to work against this background, but it doesn't want to be too blue. It doesn't want to be too purple. I think I've got the colour that works quite well. So let's see. I'll just put a little bit on here. Yeah, not too bad. I think it's maybe a little hair too blue. Let's go into some of the lavender. And here's where you just have to really, just work it a little bit sometimes. Don't just go with the first colour you make and think, well, that'll do. Because later on you might think, well, no, actually that won't do. I think that's not too bad. I'll just tone that down just a little bit. Over here, I'm going to have a nice big tree sitting on its own bank. And over here, I'm going to have a couple of trees coming forward as well. Again, just using the very corner of the brush. Just put a few bars across. Just looking at Bob's original, and that's what he's got on here, just some soft snow. And for that, I'm going to use my old brush again. I'm going to go straight into some of this grubby white colour and pull the paint down very flat. It doesn't want to be white, and I'm using the Bob Ross logo as a guide here. So I'm putting the paint on the back of the brush only. What I don't want to do is turn my brush over and load it both sides. It'll sort of clog the brush up too quickly. This way, my brush actually can be pressed into the paint and it opens up. It makes a little mark across the paint. But look at the back of my brush. It's all open and fluffy. And that's what we're looking for here. And just in here under the bright spot, that's where my snow wants to be the brightest. I suppose I should have blended that out. Oh well, never mind. I got in a hurry. I started having fun, didn't I? I'd like to use a little touch of that yellow colour on there. I think that would work really well, but I know if I hit that with a touch of yellow, boy, I'm going to end up with some lovely green snow right there. So I am going to resist that temptation. Even when it's dry, you can't do it because it'll still go green. Now, let's bring in some bigger trees at the left and right, kind of get a bit more of a sort of a distance thing going on with our painting. One last little thing. I forgot to blend out the base of those trees like I said, but watch this. I can take my brush and I can just take a few little, just a wee hair on the edge of my brush. I can just tease up a little bit of that white colour. Make a little soft effect. Looks like little grasses or maybe even a little bit of undergrowth here. Just got a little touch of white on it. There we go. See? Everything you do has a little fix. If you leave something out, doesn't matter. I think it looks kind of cool. For my next two trees, I darkened my paint just a touch more. I got a little bit of the black from here and just went down a couple more shades, a little darker purple colour. Not much, just a tiny bit. And I want to really kind of put a nice tree in here on the edge, kind of close the edge in here. Now, I'm tempted to actually convert this one and just bring it forwards. Yeah, let's do that. Let's make this tree a little bigger and actually just extend it. Put a little bit of that dark colour on there and just have that coming forwards. And over the other side, again, I want another tree coming in here. Now, bear in mind, I've got some nice big trees coming in here. I have a silver birch here. So let's scratch a mark for that. I'll give him a little friend that comes through here. And there's a nice brown tree through here, a little further away. And again, that comes through into there. So you see there's a little gap here. But by doing this little bit of planning here, by actually sort of scratching out a couple of little markers, you see how much room you have left. I want to add a little bit of highlight to these trees. And I've got some titanium white and I dry clean my brush. Now, question for you. This titanium white paint from Bob Ross is a very firm, dry white paint because we want to be able to use it for mountains. It's the same sort of thickness as my trees, so it may not stick so well. So we need to loosen this up a little bit. I could add a little drop of linseed oil to it, or I can even add a little drop of liquid clear. And I'm going to take just a small drop, literally a drop of liquid clear on my fan brush. Just go into this white colour. And again, it doesn't need to be brilliant white. Remember, these trees are fairly far back in my painting, but can you see now my paint has got a little bit of a gloss to it? There, that's what we're looking for. If it looks kind of matte and dull, like the brown colour there, see that's kind of flat. That's very dry. Alizarin Crimson's quite oily and wet. Now this has got that lovely sheen to it as well. Again, just get a little bit on the very edge of the brush. Give it a little push and load just the very, very edge. Think about how the light's coming through here, and I'm going to just touch the right side of my tree. Just get a little bit of light. Now that might be too bright. Let's turn that down a little bit. There. Just touch that in. These trees, they got the light coming from the other side. Let's make him a little brighter. a little bit more even. But if it's too bright, it's easy. We can just wipe off our brush, knock off that highlight. And we've still got our original dark colour there. We can go back into that again if we need to. And if it's got a little bit too bright, we can just take a little touch of that, go back through the centre, and just break it up a little bit. There. I think that looks a little better. Right, let's add a little bit more snow, but not too much more because we've got to start doing some reflections. I put out a little bit more titanium white because you saw there I was using that kind of slightly thinned out titanium white paint, and boy, it was just a little bit hard to make it stick. In fact, if it's too thin and runny, it kind of makes more mush than it does like a nice sort of snow. You started seeing here, it started going kind of mushy. So I've got a little bit of fresh titanium white, firm and dry. I want to just think about putting in a few little riverbanks here and a couple more layers. So let's just have another layer of snow going into here. Again, a little bit of paint, a little push, and you see I made a little kind of ramp going up under that tree. I think I want to make that a little brighter. It kind of looks like it kind of goes up under the tree. Yeah, I like that. And again, just want this to look like it's sort of coming slightly forwards in the painting. In Bob's original painting, he used some of this tree colour here in his reflections to tone them down a bit. And I can understand why. If I pull down with some pure white in my brush, that's all going to become far too bright. So let's tone this down a little bit. Take a little bit of my colour I used to make the snow, just add in a little touch more of that purple colour here, just to knock down the colour just a hair more. And again, the brightest colour is going to be down through here in the centre. I left a little gap, and don't actually touch the snow. Just leave a little bit of a kind of a shadow in there, so it looks like the land standing above the water. And as you see, just go in, give it a little press, a little wiggle, and pull down. And as you see, I'm picking up the lavender colour as I go. Knock that off. Load a little more paint on your brush. And keep on loading if you need to. Just keep on adding little touches of white. And as I come to the side, I'm going to let this get a little darker. I think this is just about bright enough, but I could always add a little touch more of that white colour to my brush. Just come in and just sparkle that centre just a little bit more. You kind of get your eye to be drawn to the back. But don't go over it too many times because you'll end up kind of making this all blurry. I know it's very tempting to go over it several times, but please don't. And give your brush a really good dry clean. Knock off all that surplus paint. You want a brush that's really as dry as you can get it. And just across the water here, lay your brush at a nice angle and just gently go across. And then go up a little bit and go back away. And then across. And sometimes if you're lucky, you can get a kind of a bit of a ripple going on. But this is super gentle. Absolutely no pressure on that brush. And you just want to create the illusion that there's a little bit of a disturbance on the surface of the water. There. And that's it. Don't be tempted to keep going across it because, believe you me, this will soon turn into a nice fog. The finishing touch, I'm going to use my palette knife and a little bit of this colour. Just take a very small amount, just a tiny touch, barely anything. And I'm going to put in just one or two little water lines here, and this just separates the land from the snow. So you just kind of just rub your knife against the painting. And try and make sure you keep them nice and level. Even if you're coming down, you still got to go down in nice level steps. And there, I think that's my background finished. So my painting's progressing nicely, and it's time to move to the left-hand side and do some of those big trees and bushes. This is where you have to pay special attention to the values that you mix and the values that you use. You see, there's a great temptation to want to over highlight this. The trees in the background there are what I call sort of placeholders. They're filler trees. They want to be sort of subdued and pushed back. I want those silver birches to stand out. If there's a bit of a tussle between those and what's happening behind it, well, it all gets a bit lost. And there's always the temptation that we're going to over highlight those little bushes that come around in front. So you have to be very careful not to be using pure white colours at all. I can't emphasise that enough. I got myself into trouble before. So let's push on and start working on this left-hand side. So here's my painting. It sat overnight and I gave my brushes a nice wash and a good clean and got all the paint off of them. They were getting a little bit sort of sticky and tacky. You find that sometimes if they sat out for a few hours. And the other thing I did, which is something I'm going to always advise you to do, is if you stop, always tidy up your palette. Put away paints that you don't think you're going to need and ditch any colours that you know you're not going to need. And tidy your palette back up again. This morning what I've done is I put a little bit of alizarin crimson and a touch of phthalo blue together to make a nice purple for an underpainting. I want to underpaint these trees and bushes on this right hand side. I'm going to use my old brush to do this, and I'm going to go through that paint. Just drag your brush through the paint one side, don't flip it over, just one side, and give it a little push. And I hope you can see that when I do that little push, again, I get that little ridge of paint. And I'm going to favour that right-hand corner because these are what are called corner of the brush trees and bushes. And again, it's dark on dark, so you might not see this as well as you could do, but I think I scratched on the positions of my trees. And again, you may not see those completely, but I'm going to just texture up my painting a little bit. I'll try and play around with the exposure so you can see some of this. But essentially, I want to create some nice bushes coming in from this right-hand side. And to make the paint stick easier, I'm going to texture it. Now, as I come past this little piece of the sky, you'll probably see this a little better. As you can see, I'm applying this paint nice and heavily, and I'm tipping my brush, favouring that right-hand corner, creating a lovely texture that I can get some highlight to stick on. And you need to be reloading your brush quite frequently for this. And here's where you will see my paint against that snow. I'll make sure I go over it. Can you see all those little patterns I'm creating there? There's a nice little bush in here. I definitely want to get that in. And I got some nice bushes round in here to paint as well. Okay, let's put some highlight on here. For my highlights, I want to use the nice brush, and I've got some titanium white here, and I picked up a little bit of that purplish colour here, and we want a touch of phthalo blue. That's it. See how much I've toned that down. Now you might think that looks a little bit too dull, but trust me, when it hits my painting, that's really going to pop. And once again, I've got my little Bob Ross logo showing on the end of my brush. By habit, I load my brushes the same way. I sort of give them a bit of a hairstyle. And you'll notice my paint's nice and juicy. I added another touch of liquid clear to that. I'm going to just favour that right corner. There, just push it in. Now, these are all in the background behind the main trees. And let's put on a couple of dabs to see what it looks like. Whew, look at that, that's pretty bright. Now you thought that was going to be a bit on the dull side, didn't you? Well, I did warn you, it's pretty bright. So when you do this, concentrate on painting one little branch at a time. So think about how the branch would hang in from the side and hang down, how the little fingers hang with some snow on it. And take your time when you do this, don't go rushing at it. That's one little branch, two little branches. Maybe leave a little shadow in here. I can just about see a little branch there. And again, you're just tapping gently. And where the paint sticks easily, you've got a nice dark colour underneath. If it doesn't stick, then it means that the painting is sort of a bit on the smooth side, or if it makes a mush, you should see some of this nice sort of texture. And as I come through into here, I want to get this to be a little darker. There we go. So there's another little branch there, and it's quite subdued. Maybe this branch will be a little brighter. There you go. And all I did is I just went from here, I went to just over there. So just a little bit of a variation of colour. And back in here, back into the shadows again. I'm going to come through into here next. And as I come around the corner, I'm going to leave some lovely dark in here. That's where the trees are going to be fitting. In Bob's original painting, he had a couple of silver birches, a nice little brown sort of pine tree there. And I really like that arrangement. And one of the little tips I'm going to give you is if you've been using underpaintings and highlights and there's a lot of paint on here, you might have trouble making those tree trunks really work. And what I like to do is use the little short blade of my knife, just scrape off some of the paint. I can still see the line of the brown tree that I put on there, and if I put my knife against the painting and just slide it down and just scrape out any paint that I think is going to get in my way, it means that you've got a better chance of getting your dark underpainting on there without it going all mushy, and then you'll find that your highlights stick better too. Now, I can't see my silver birches, I've covered those up. I know that one went through about here, and there was one just to the left of it. Okay, so it's like that, sort of 3 tree trunks. The advantage of doing this is if you do something you don't like, you can just sort of underpaint it and re-highlight it again. It's quite an easy fix. In Bob's original version, he painted his tree trunks using the fan brush, taking Van Dyke Brown and dark sienna down the trunks, but I actually fancy to use the filbert brush a bit more, a bit more sort of control with that one. And I'm going to use some of the Van Dyke Brown, rather firm and really dry, and I'm going to tint that with a little bit of this dark sienna colour. Again, it's a very firm, dry paint. Remember, this has been sitting out overnight, so it's got a bit of a crust on it, but actually that's quite useful. A nice bit of texture to it. And just block in silver birch tree, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit rough and lumpy and bumpy and chunks of paint on it, it actually goes quite well. And I'm going to drop in some nice colour on that one too. I'm probably going to finish those a little bit further back and then bring this brown tree trunk through into the foreground just a little bit more, so these two are going to be more background. The other nice thing too, you want to get a reasonable good shape to this. You don't want it to be too heavy at the top and then grow skinny and then grow big at the base there. So take your time when you're shaping up your trees. Get the shape and the proportion looking just right. I think that's about it. Okay, I put out some fresh white and it looks a little bit bright, doesn't it? I think I might just tint that just a tiny bit with just a little touch of dark sienna, just to sort of knock the brightness off it. It was just a little bit too vibrant, I think. There we go. Maybe even a touch of the Indian yellow. There, being twilight, we might get a little bit of light bouncing around. So I just don't want pure white. And I'm going to pick up just a small roll of paint. So pull your paint very flat and start and slide your knife up. And I like that technique because it means I can pick up and I can see how much I'm getting on the edge of my palette knife. Now, super light touch. Think about the light rays coming through here. Think about them hitting the side of this tree first. These are the birches, this is a brown tree. And the stroke is down and around. Now I'm going to shift my position because I'm sitting far too much square to the front of my trees. I really want to move myself around to the side so I can get a nice sort of swing at this. And this is the tree I'm going to do first, starting about the center, touch, and then just do a little sweeping stroke. There we go. And it takes a little practice, but as soon as you start to move, start lifting off. Off. Touch, and I've toned my paint down a little bit more for this next tree because it's sort of maybe partly shadowed. So not quite so bright. And again, touch. And as soon as you start to move, you go around and up. Touch, and around and up. Let's say it takes a little practice, but once you've done it a few times, you get the kind of feel for it. Now these two trees cross over each other, so and I'm going to just touch there and go again. And you see, it's as quick as that. You mustn't fiddle with these too much. But if you do over highlight something, let's say you do. Let's make a mistake. I take a big chunk of paint and I do a real one of those. I bury my tree trunk. All is not lost at all. But you can take your palette knife and first of all you just remove some of the excess. Yeah, take off that excess paint and you're halfway to fixing it really. And you can pick up some of your Van Dyke brown, your dark sienna. And you can either pick it up on the back of the knife, and you can just literally just push back in some of the shadow colour. So it's the same stroke but done backwards. There you go. So you can move the paint around pretty easily. And if you really have to come on back and play with things, you can use the small blade of your knife just to do any little touch-ups. And again, super light touch here, finger and thumb. Try and keep that rounded shape going to your stroke. There we go. So that's the technique, around and up. And for the back of the tree, I want some referred light. In other words, light coming past the tree, maybe bouncing off of the bushes, coming back. And for that, I want a little bit of a bluish colour. And again, I'm using the small blade of my knife, a little bit of that blue highlighting colour. And just along that edge, just a few touches. Look at that. What an impact that has. See how it brings the tree away from the background. And you don't have to do very much of this. Just a little here and there. And again, if you do it too much, it's not a problem. Wipe off your palette knife. Just go across it. Let it mix with some of the original tree trunk colour. So that's it. Painting silver birches. Great fun. Now, let's do this tree next. Oh, before that, I want to do some branches. Get things in the right order, Ranson. And I've put a little bit of linseed oil onto my liner brush. And that's been sitting and soaking for the last sort of half an hour or so to soften the bristles up. And that's another one of those little top tips. If you soak your brush, get the bristles nice and soft and pliable, you'll find that they work a lot nicer. Just roll your brush through that paint. I'm just going to use Van Dyke brown for this. Again, hold your brush well back and think about painting some nice outward branches from the main tree behind that tree. Now, you're not going to see a lot of these because obviously they're against the dark bushes, but add a few anyway. And we might add a little bit of snow to them, see if we can make them stand out. Now, top tip here, don't grow things out really over your sky with these trees. This brown tree is going to have some nice branches just reaching out a little further, so don't create too much of a problem there. I seem to have got a bit of a crisscross thing going on here, which I'm not terribly pleased with. I might try and straighten that out a little bit. Put that back on. And again, it's easy enough to fix your trees. So don't think that because you've done the tree and it's sort of worked out and you kind of make a little bit of a hash of things, that you can't go back and fix it. You absolutely can. I just put a little bit of linseed oil on some of this white. I've dry cleaned my little liner brush. It's still got had a bit of brownness, and my paint looks a little bit sort of beigey, but that's okay. I'm sure it'll work out. And again, I just want a little bit of snow or something on top of these branches just to make them stand out a little bit. Just put a little bit of something on them, nothing too heavy. There we go. Just a little touch of highlight. There. I think that's as much as I need to do with that. Let's work on this tree next. I'm going to use my palette knife. I'll take some of this mucky dark sienna colour. Make a little bit of a dark marble mixed colour here. So dark sienna, some grubby white with a little bit of yellow mixed through it. I might even put in, well, even just a speck of crimson. Nothing special again, just a few nice sort of orangey, sort of nice sort of chocolatey brown colours. Again, a little roll of paint. And this time I'm going to be tapping onto the tree trunk rather than going round it. Again, I think about where the light's coming from, and that's where I think my colour would be brightest. Again, just touch and create a nice sort of bark effect here on this tree. I might even put a little pop of a really bright colour on there. Whew, look at that, just a sparkler. Ooh, not too much now. So as you see, I had a little bit too much fun and I filled it in a bit too much. I'll pick up some of that nice dark sienna colour and just tap some of that back in, really through the middle of the tree, just to darken it all back up again. And this is where having paint which is, well, a little bit old and a bit sort of stiff and crunchy, actually looks quite good. Remember, if it looks like bark and it feels like bark, then, well, people will expect it to be a tree. There we go. So I'm just going to put this on here pretty thick and crunchy. There we go. I reckon that looks lovely. I think that's just a couple of branches on there and it'll be done. And if you can't resist it, add a little bit of snow to those branches. I got some titanium white and I've just mixed it with a little bit of Indian yellow. A little bit of sunshine or a little bit of twilight. Catching some of that. Just a little piece on the end of the knife. Add a few little dabs of snow, those little crooks on the little arms. That's where they works quite well. But I say, don't overdo it, although I probably will. There we go. It doesn't take much. It just gives your painting a little more character. And I'm sure had Bob had more time on his painting show, he would have done this as well. And sometimes I like to put little blobs of snow stuck to the trunk. I think that always looks good, as though the wind has blown some snow there and got it kind of stuck into the bark. It doesn't need much. Again, this is titanium white. It's pretty thick, pretty sticky. And so you might have trouble making it stick to the tree. You might find it pulls off some of the highlights, but, well, I think it looks fun. Maybe the sort of thing you should do when the painting has sat for a day or two and dried out. Maybe I will later on, but yeah, there we go. Just having some fun painting a tree trunk. The fun thing is, if it doesn't work out, just scrape it off and just do it over again. Right, let's work on this foreground here and get some nice bushes in here. I've gone back to my old 1-inch brush, picked up a little of this lavender colour, dab into that. I just want to hide up the base of these little trees. Just dab a little bit of shadow in there. And we can go back to this pale blue colour here. I think I need a little more paint. And then we'll just do some highlights through here. So the cameraman forgot to hit record. That's me, of course. And again, I've used switch back to my nice brush. And I've just thought about how the light would come through here. I just caught the edges of a few of these little bushes and just using the very corner of the brush, just touch. And as you see, I do one little bush at a time. I think about how that would fit around the tree, going from highlight back into shadow. Again, a little touch more of this off-white colour with a little bit of a bluish tint through it. And give it a little push, favour that corner. Exactly the same process as we've done before. And then just sparkle up a couple of bushes here and there. And then let the colour run out as you come round. So do one little bush at a time. I've gone for a little bit more of that alizarin crimson colour. Just put a little touch on my palette there. I think that might make a nice pinkish colour. Again, just a little variety. Get that one there a little. Yeah, look at that. Just a little touch of something different. I think we're ready to pull the oval off. Ready to reveal the oval. And I double checked and triple checked that I've actually got the camera running. And I'm just going to grab that little piece of tape there. Start peeling this away gently. This is deadly. Get this anywhere near you and you'll be stuck to your painting and stuck to your table and stuck to everything. So dump it straight into some paper towel. Don't forget, you can't touch the outside of your painting because, well, your hands are covered in paint, so get a baby wipe out as well. So there we have it. My version of the Bob Ross classic, Twilight Beauty. It's one of my favourites. What was that? Bravery test? Painting outside the oval? No, you can't be serious. What? Risk ruining my lovely painting? No. Oh no. Oh, okay, seeing as it's you. Okay, Van Dyke brown and black as before. Little touch of grubby white. Touch and lift. Touch of blue. And some nice highlights for the tree. Ooh, got a bit of yellow in there, never mind. I'll put some somewhere else. That way it'll look like it was always supposed to be there. And while we're at it, let's extend these bushes out as well. And with a little bit of paint on the edge of my knife, add a few nice grasses too. So there we have it, my version of the Bob Ross classic, Twilight Beauty, with a few little extra twists as well. Now, don't move, there's some lovely videos for you to watch coming right along. Happy painting, people! I'm going to put something over there later on.